The frozen night snow fell like sharp knives from the black sky. Every flake stung the skin. The wind howled, pushing the frozen air deep into her bones. Her arms trembled as she held her child tighter against her chest. The boy's small face was buried under the thick scarf, but she could still feel how cold his skin was. His tiny breaths came slow, weak. She kept walking. She didn't know where. The world around her was only white and black snow and shadow. The ground was hard as stone under her boots, but every step felt heavier than the last. Her legs shook. Her lips were blue. She whispered to her child, "Just a little more. Just a little more." But in her heart, she knew there was no more. There was nothing ahead. Her planet's winter was deadly. No one walked out here without shelter, but she had no choice. The soldiers had burned the camp. The last fire she saw was the fire that destroyed everything. Now it was only her. The child and the endless storm. The wind screamed louder as if the planet itself wanted her gone. Snow hit her eyes until she could not see. Her body bent forward, under the weight of her child, but still she walked one step, another. Then she stumbled. She fell to her knees. Snow rushed into her clothes, biting at her skin. The boy gave a soft, weak sound, but didn't cry. He had no strength left. She pulled him closer, wrapping her thin coat around him. It didn't help. The cold was too strong. Her teeth chattered so hard her jaw hurt. A dark thought came. We can't go on. She looked down at her child's small face. She had promised him they would survive, but what promise could she keep now? She could barely keep her own eyes open. The wind grew calmer for a moment, as if giving her a choice. She lowered herself onto the snow, still holding the boy. She wrapped him tightly, blocking the wind with her own body. "It will be quick," she whispered, tears freezing on her cheeks. Her eyes closed. The cold became a strange, deep silence. Then, warmth. At first she thought it was a dream. A gentle heat pressed against her back. The air she breathed in was not sharp anymore. She heard a sound, a low, steady breath. Not hers, not the boy's. Her eyes opened slowly. The snow still fell, but something blocked most of it. She was inside the shadow of a tall figure. The figure crouched beside her, a heavy cloak draped over both her and the child. The cloak was warm, real warmth, not the trick of a dying mind. She tried to speak, but her voice was only a whisper. "Who?" The figure didn't answer. Instead, strong hands, bigger than any she had seen, lifted her child gently from her arms. The boy's face turned toward the stranger's chest, where the heat was even stronger. Her vision cleared. A little. The figure's face was hidden by a hood, but two eyes, faintly glowing in the storm, looked down at her. Not the eyes of her people, not the eyes of any alien she knew. Human eyes. Her heart froze again, but not from the cold. She had heard of humans. On her world, they were a story, a warning told to children. If you see a human, run. They were said to be dangerous, unpredictable, and impossible to defeat. The human pulled her up with one arm as if she weighed nothing. She was too weak to resist. His other arm held the child close, the cloak wrapping around all three of them. Without a word, he turned and began walking through the storm. His steps were firm, confident, like he knew exactly where to go. She could only stare at his back, confused and afraid. Why would a human help her? Why was he here, in the middle of nowhere, in the dead of winter? The storm thickened, the snow falling harder, but the warmth of his body shielded them. She could hear the sound of something hanging from his belt metal, pieces clicking together as he moved. A weapon? A tool? She didn't know. They walked for what felt like hours, though it could have been only minutes. The cold still reached her face, but the rest of her body stayed warm inside the cloak at last. Through the snow, she saw a dim orange light ahead. A fire. The human led them to a small hollow in the side of a hill. Inside, rocks formed a natural wall, blocking the wind. The fire burned in the center, its flames dancing like golden ribbons. He set the child down near the fire, still wrapped in part of the cloak. The boy shivered once, then let out a slow, steady breath. The human looked at her, his hood still hiding most of his face. "You'll live," he said, his voice deep and calm. It was the first time she had ever heard a human speak. She didn't know whether to thank him or fear him. The fire crackled between them. The storm howled outside, and in the glow of the flames, she realized something that made her shiver, not from cold, but from the unknown. He had found them in the middle of a killing storm. But storms like this didn't happen here by accident. Somebody might have sent him, and she didn't know if that was a good thing or the beginning of something much worse. The stranger's fire, when she opened her eyes, the world was orange, not from sunrise, but from firelight. For a moment, she thought she had died and woken in some warm dream. The heat touched her skin, chased away the ice that had wrapped itself around her bones. The crackle of burning wood was soft, almost comforting. Then she remembered the hooded figure. Her eyes darted around. She lay on a rough blanket near a small fire. The snowstorm outside was still fierce, but here, in this hollow of rock, the wind's scream was distant. The boy slept beside her, wrapped tightly in a thick, unfamiliar cloth. His cheeks had color again. The man sat on the other side of the fire, silent. His hood still covered most of his face, but the flames lit his jaw strong. Sharp, human, she pushed herself up, her muscles stiff from cold and exhaustion. "What do you want from us?" she asked. Her voice trembled, not from the cold this time, but from uncertainty. He didn't answer right away. He reached into a small pack by his side and pulled out a metal container. Opening it, he took out something round, flat, and slightly steaming. He tossed it toward her. "Eat," he said. The smell hit her first savory, warm, unlike any food she had known. Her stomach twisted in hunger, but she kept her hands at her sides. "We don't take food from strangers." The man's eyes lifted to hers. The firelight caught them, turning them into faint golden embers. "Then take it for your child." She hesitated. The boy stirred beside her, letting out a small sound. His little hand reached blindly toward the heat. She took the food. It was softer than it looked. She broke off a piece and pressed it to the boy's lips. He chewed slowly, then with more energy. Then the man watched without speaking. She studied him from across the fire. His clothes were thick, patched, clearly made for survival in the harshest conditions. On his belt hung a strange weapon, long black, with glowing lines running along its side. She had never seen anything like it. Finally, she asked, "Why are you here?" "This place. No one comes here." The man poked at the fire with a stick. "Something was moving in the storm last night. Not natural. I went to see, and you found us." "I found something alive," he corrected. His gaze shifted briefly to the boy, then back to her. There was a silence, broken only by the wind outside and the fire's crackle. She felt like every word from him had weight, as if he spoke only when necessary. Then a sound, low, far, but clear enough to raise the hair on her arms. A howl. The man's head tilted slightly. Listening, she froze. The sound came again, longer this time, echoing against the frozen hills. It was not a wolf's howl. It was deeper, with a strange metallic edge, as if something alive and something machine had become one. Her heart raced. They followed us. The man stood in one smooth motion. From beside the fire, he picked up his weapon. It hummed softly in his grip. "What is it?" she asked. He glanced toward the storm. "Hunters." She swallowed hard. "Not soldiers." Worse, the boy woke, eyes wide. "Mama." She pulled him close. "It's all right," she lied. The man knelt beside them. "We move now. Staying means dying." She shook her head. "In that storm?" "We'll freeze, you won't," he said, and for a second. She almost believed him. He slung the weapon over his back, grabbed the heavy cloak, and wrapped it around all three of them again. The heat of his body was instant, pushing away. The cold the moment they stepped outside. The wind was wild, pulling at their clothes. Snow bit at their faces. But he walked forward with steady, unshaken steps. Behind them, the howls grew louder. She risked a glance over her shoulder. Through the white storm, she saw shapes moving. Four-legged, fast, but wrong, too big, too sharp. Their eyes glowed red, cutting through the snow like small suns. The man's pace quickened. "Don't look back," he ordered. She didn't listen. She looked again. The shapes were closer. The snow couldn't hide their jagged forms, creatures of metal and flesh, their long legs ending in bladed claws. Her breath caught. "They'll catch us, they won't," he said again, this time with steel in his voice. Suddenly he stopped, pulling her and the boy to the side of a ridge. The ground here dropped away sharply, a narrow frozen river below. He pointed to the opposite side. "There's shelter. When I move, you follow." Before she could ask what he meant, he pulled something from his belt, a small sphere, glowing faintly. With a flick of his wrist, he threw it into the storm. A second later, the night exploded with light. Blinding white burst in all directions. The howls turned into high-pitched screams. The red eyes vanished. He grabbed her arm. Now they scrambled across the frozen river, slipping but not falling. Her heart pounded so hard it drowned out the storm. On the far side, they found a narrow gap between two ice walls. The man pushed them through first, then followed, sealing the entrance with blocks of snow and ice. Inside, it was dark and still. The boy clung to her. She could hear her own breathing, loud in the silence. The man's voice came from the shadows. "Rest while you can. They'll come." Again, she wanted to ask why he cared, why he was risking himself. But she didn't, because deep down, she wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer. The hunt begins. The wind outside was still screaming when the first scratch came. It was faint at first, just a small scrape against the ice. Then another. Then a long dragging sound, like claws sliding over glass. She froze. The boy pressed himself deeper into her arms. In the dark shelter, every sound seemed louder. The man didn't move. He was crouched near the entrance, his weapon resting across his knees, his head tilted toward the sound. Then came the howl. Low, deep, too close. "They're here," she whispered. "I know," he said quietly. His voice carried no fear, only focus. The scratching turned to pounding. Something hit the ice wall hard enough to make the ground shake. Snow fell from the ceiling in soft chunks. The boy whimpered. She pressed her hand over his ear, but she could still hear the creatures outside circling. Testing, searching. The man rose to his feet, slow and steady, as if every movement was measured. He touched a small control on the side of his weapon, and the hum deepened, glowing lines on its surface, flaring brighter. "Stay behind me," he said. The pounding stopped. For a moment, there was only silence. Then the ice shattered. A claw, black and metallic, shot through the wall. The sharp tip missed her by a breath before retreating. Through the hole, red eyes flashed. The man moved faster than her eyes could. Follow. One step forward, weapon up, a sharp burst of light. The hole exploded in sparks and smoke. A scream tore through the storm outside. It was high and broken, like something in pain but not entirely alive. "They know where we are now," he said. "We move." She wanted to argue out there was worse. But the wall cracked again, this time in 3 places. Pieces of ice fell away, revealing jagged mouths lined with both metal teeth and living flesh. The man grabbed her shoulder and pushed her toward the far side of the shelter. There was a narrow tunnel she hadn't noticed before, half hidden under collapsed ice. "Go," he ordered. She ducked inside, crawling with the boy held tight. The tunnel was cramped, forcing her to move slowly. Behind her, the man fired again. Each shot lit the tunnel in brief flashes of blue light. The tunnel sloped downward. Cold air rushed past her, carrying the smell of frost and something else. A faint, sharp scent like heated metal. The boy whispered against her ear, "Mama, they're coming." She didn't answer. She could hear it too, scraping, clanging, as if the creatures were forcing themselves into the tunnel after them. The man's voice echoed behind her, "Keep moving." She crawled faster, the ice cutting into her knees. Her heart pounded in her throat. Then the tunnel opened into a wide cavern. The air here was warmer, though she didn't know why. Before she could look around, the man emerged. From the tunnel, weapons still glowing. His cloak was torn, but his face was calm. "They'll be here in seconds," Kay said. The cavern floor was uneven, full of ridges and cracks. In the center stood a tall column of ice, its surface marked with strange lines like writing. The lines pulsed faintly with blue light. She stared. "What is that, old tech?" he said simply. He ran to it, pressing his hand against one. Of the glowing marks, a column responded, light spreading outward like veins filling with energy. The ground shook from the walls of the cavern. Metal plates unfolded, forming barriers. Narrow slits appeared, and from within them came the sound of machinery waking after years of silence. The first creature burst from the tunnel. It was worse in full view. Twice the size of a man, its body a twisted mix of bone and armor. Its limbs jointed wrong. Steam hissed from vents along its spine. Its glowing red eyes locked onto her immediately. She backed away, holding the boy close. The man didn't flinch. "Stay down." The barriers along the walls came to life, firing thin. Beams of light that sliced through the creature's limbs. It screamed, stumbling forward. Another creature appeared, then a third. The air filled with heat and the smell of burning metal. The man moved between her and the monsters, firing his weapon with quick, precise bursts. Each shot left smoking holes in armor and flesh. One creature lunged toward her. Time slowed. She could see every jagged tooth, every drop of hot steam from its jaws. A flash. The creature's head exploded into shards of ice and metal. The man was already turning to the next one. His movements were fluid, almost like a dance. Not a single step wasted. Not a single shot missed. In less than a minute, the cavern was silent, except for the hum of the strange machines. She stared at him, chest heaving. "What are you?" He didn't answer. He walked past the fallen creatures, checking each one, making sure they wouldn't rise again. Finally, he looked at her. "We can't stay here. The noise will bring more." She hesitated. "If there are more, we won't survive." His gaze didn't waver. "We will. I know the way." Outside the cavern, the storm roared louder than ever. But for the first time, she wondered if the man was right. If maybe, just maybe, they could make it through. Shelter in the ice, blood steamed on the snow. The man didn't stop to look at it. He pulled her forward, his grip firm, the boy safe in his other arm. The storm clawed at them, trying to steal away their warmth. But the man's steps were steady, certain. "Where are we going?" She shouted over the wind. "Somewhere they won't follow," he said without looking back. She doubted such a place existed. the hunters never stopped. She had heard stories from other survivors, how the machines chased prey until there was nothing left to chase. The man turned sharply toward a sheer wall of ice, taller than any building she had ever seen. The surface was smooth, pale blue, like frozen glass. "There's nothing here," she yelled. He ignored her, placing the boy back in her arms. Then he pressed his palm against the ice. At first, nothing happened. Then faint lines began to appear beneath the surface, circles, symbols, and patterns that pulsed with a soft blue glow. The light spread outward like veins under skin. The ice shifted with a deep, rumbling sound. A seam appeared, widening into a doorway just big enough for a person to pass through. Her eyes widened. "How?" "Old human tech," he said simply, and stepped inside. She hesitated. Stepping into unknown human structures was dangerous. Her people told dark tales about what humans left behind, machines that could kill in ways no one understood. But another howl cut through the storm behind her, closer than ever. She hurried inside. The doorway closed with a heavy thud, sealing them in complete darkness. Then, one by one, lights flickered on above them, soft white circles set into the walls, glowing like captured moons. The air inside was warmer, dry, safe. They stood in a narrow tunnel made of smooth metal and glassy ice. Strange panels lined the walls, some glowing faintly, others dark and cracked. The man led them deeper. The floor sloped downward, the walls curving around them until the tunnel opened into a vast chamber. She stopped, her breath catching. The room was enormous, big enough to hold a small city. Ice clung to the ceiling and upper walls, but the lower parts were metal, polished and unbroken despite who knew how many years. At the center stood a great pillar of light, humming softly. It was surrounded by smaller structures, machines, storage pods, what looked like sleeping chambers sealed with clear lids. "This place," she whispered. "It's human." "Yes," he said. "It's very old. Built before the fall." She didn't know what the fall meant, but she didn't ask. He walked to a console near the pillar. His fingers moved over the surface, tapping symbols she couldn't read. A low vibration filled the floor, and panels on the walls slid open, revealing heating vents. Warm air poured into the room, wrapping around her like a blanket. The boy wriggled in her arms, sighing in relief. "You can rest here," the man said. "No scanners, no scent for the hunters to track. They'll pass us by." She set the boy down on a metal bench, still looking around the chamber. "How do you know this place exists? How do you know how to use it?" The man paused, as if deciding how much to tell her. "I was here before," he said at last. "Long ago. When I wasn't alone." The words carried a weight she didn't understand. She studied him in the warm light. His hood was pushed back now, revealing a face marked by faint scars. His hair, dark and streaked with silver at the temples. His eyes, human eyes, were sharp but tired, like they had seen too much. "You lost someone?" she guessed. He didn't answer. Instead, he opened one of the storage pods. Inside were sealed packs of food, strange tools, and blankets that felt impossibly soft. He tossed one to her. "Rest, eat. You'll need your strength." She sat with the boy, wrapping them both in the blanket. For the first time since the camp burned, she felt her muscles loosen. The heat seeped into her bones, chasing away the cold that had become a part of her. The boy was asleep in minutes. The man stayed near the console, checking displays and adjusting controls. She should have felt safe. But something about the way he kept glancing at the shadows in the corners made her uneasy. "What is it?" she asked finally. He looked at her for a long moment. "This place hides us from the hunters, but not from everything." Before she could ask what that meant, the lights flickered. A faint hum echoed from somewhere deep below. The man's hand went to his weapon. "Stay here," Don't move." He walked toward a narrow passage on the far side of the chamber. His steps were slow, deliberate. She listened. The hum grew louder, joined by a sound like metal shifting against metal, and then a low, mechanical voice, broken and glitching, drifted from the dark. Human, detected. Her blood ran cold. The man turned his head slightly toward her. His expression was unreadable. "They're not all dead." The cold, warmer the voice echoed through the chamber, flat and cold. Human, detected. The woman's breath caught. The boy stirred in his sleep, unaware of the danger. The man's weapon was already in his hands, its faint blue lines glowing brighter. He moved toward the shadowed passage where the voice had come from. She whispered after him, "What is it?" His reply was short. "Old guardian, friend, or enemy? That depends if it remembers." The hum beneath their feet grew stronger, as if the entire structure was waking. Lights in the far walls flickered to life, casting the shadows aside. The passageway was no longer dark. Something stepped into view. It was taller than the man by a head end, shaped like a person, but wrong in small ways. Its arms were too long, its legs too thin. Its face was a smooth, blank plate of metal, except for a single glowing circle in the center. The glow shifted from white to red. The voice spoke again, sharper now. "Authorization required. Identify." The man didn't flinch. "Code Sigma 7, Captain Elias Wren, Terran Expeditionary Force." The machine paused, its head tilted slightly, as if searching through memories. "Data, fragmented. Match, partial. I was here before," he said evenly. "You know that." The glow in the machine's face flickered, changing from red to yellow. "State objective." The man's voice stayed calm. "Shelter. Protection for 2 non-combatants. Override hunt protocols." The machine was silent for a long moment. Then, without warning, it turned its head toward the woman. "Species, non-human. Status, unregistered. Risk, variable." She froze under its gaze. The circle of light scanned over her, then over the boy. The man stepped between them. "They're under my protection. That's enough. Processing." The hum in the floor deepened. Somewhere above, heavy doors shifted, sealing tighter. Finally, the light in the machine's face returned to white. "Temporary clearance. Granted. Duration, 12 standard hours. Warning, hunters remain in pursuit." The man lowered his weapon slightly. "Good, keep the perimeter sealed." The machine stepped aside, disappearing back into the passage. She let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "It listened to you." He gave a short nod. For now, she frowned. "You knew the code. You knew its name. You've been here before. With who?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he walked to one of the old consoles, activating a different section of the chamber. Panels slid open in the walls, revealing rows of heating units. Warm air poured out, stronger than before. "You can rest here tonight," he said. "The cold won't touch you." The boy sat up, rubbing his eyes. "It's warm." "Like a hug," he mumbled. The woman smiled faintly, brushing his hair back. "Yes." The cold warmer made it happen. Man glanced over at that. "Cold warmer. It's what he calls you," she said. For the first time, something almost like a smile touched his face. "I've been called worse." They ate from the food packed dry, but rich enough to give them strength. The boy laughed softly at the strange taste, and for a few moments, the chamber felt almost safe. But the man's eyes kept drifting to the far wall, where faint red lights pulsed in a slow, steady rhythm. "What is that?" she asked. "Motion?" "Alerts," he said. "They're moving outside, circling." Her stomach tightened. "The hunters," he nodded. "They won't stop. Not until one of us is dead." The boy's laughter faded. Can they come in? The man crouched in front of him. Not tonight, but tomorrow, maybe. The boy nodded slowly, then curled back up in the blanket. Within minutes, he was asleep again. The woman watched the man quietly. Why are you doing this? You don't know us. You could have left us in the storm. He didn't look at her when he answered. I lost someone. A child. Storm like this. I couldn't save her. Her breath caught. It expected. Silence or deflection, but not this. I swore I wouldn't let it happen again, he said, simply. She didn't know what to say. So she just sat beside him in the warm air, listening to the faint hum of the old machines. Hours passed. The warmth made her eyelids heavy, but she noticed the man never lay down. He sat with his weapon in reach, watching the entrance. Sometime in the night, a sound came, a sharp clang from beyond the walls, followed by a low growl. The man stood instantly. Stay here. She wanted to stop him, to ask where he was going. But before she could speak, it disappeared into the dark passage where the guardian had gone earlier. The boy stirred, sensing her unease. Mama, it's all right, she whispered though. She didn't believe it. Minutes passed. The warmth felt thinner, as if the air itself was holding its breath. Then, from far down the corridor, there was a burst of light, and the sound of metal tearing. The man's voice came faintly, carried through the halls. Not while I'm here. The humans promised. The scream of twisting metal rolled through the ice walls. She jerked to her feet, clutching the boy, her eyes fixed on the dark corridor where the man had gone. The warmth of the chamber suddenly felt thin, fragile, as if one more breath of the storm could steal it away. A faint blue flash lit the hallway, then another. The sound of something heavy crashing to the floor echoed, followed by silence. Her chest tightened. Elias? The man appeared at the corridor's mouth, his cloak torn and dusted with frost, weapons smoking faintly in his hands. His expression was unreadable, but the tension in his shoulders told her enough. They found a way to weaken the outer locks, he said. They won't get in tonight, but tomorrow, maybe sooner. The boy's voice was small. Can we? Run away. The man crouched beside him. His gaze softened in a way she had not seen before. We can run, but I won't just run. I'll get you somewhere they can't follow. She frowned. Somewhere like this. He shook his head. Better. This place is old, but it's not safe anymore. There's a valley far south hidden by storms, warmed by geothermal vents. No hunters, no patrols. If we can make it there, you live. Her throat tightened. If his eyes held hers, when, not if. The boy leaned closer. Why are you helping us? For a moment, Elias said nothing. Then, in a voice low and steady, he answered, because I couldn't help her. The woman's brow furrowed. Her. My daughter. The words hung in the warm air. His voice didn't break. But there was a weight in it, heavier than the ice above their heads. She was small, brave, too curious for a place like this. I told her to stay in the shelter, but she followed me out into the white. The storm took her before the hunters could. The boy reached out, placing his small hand on Elias's arm. I'm sorry. Elias nodded once, eyes lowering. I swore that if I ever found another child in the cold, I'd see them safe, no matter what it cost me. The woman swallowed hard. Even if it kills you. Especially if it kills me, he said, standing again. Better me than you. She wanted to argue, but the sound of distant scraping cut her short. It came from somewhere above, claws testing the ceiling of the ice. Elias's tone changed instantly. We move now, but the boy is still tired. Better tired than dead. He moved quickly to the console, shutting down the heating vents and dimming the lights. The warm air faded, replaced by the crisp bite of cold. Won't this make it harder? She asked. "It will hide us," he said. "The hunters smell heat. No heat, no trail." He slung his weapon across his back, took a second cloak from the storage pod, and wrapped it tightly around her and the boy. "Stay right behind me. Don't speak unless you have to." The tunnel out was narrow, winding upward until they reached the original ice door. The Guardian machine waited there, its white light fixed on Elias, clearance period remaining for hours. "We're leaving," Elias said. "Seal the door behind us." Hunters detected within 120 meters. Probability of survival, 16%. He gave a short, grim smile. "That's better odds than last time." The door split open with a groan. The storm's roar rushed in, carrying needles of snow that stung the skin. The cold hit like a wall, but Elias didn't hesitate. He stepped into it, leading them into the white. The snow was thick, each flake glowing faintly in the light of his visor. The wind howled, bending the world into a blur of gray and white. They moved in silence, her boots crunching softly behind him. Every so often, Elias would raise his hand and they would freeze. Listening to the far-off clatter of claws on ice, hours passed in what felt like a single breath. The cold gnawed at her legs, but the boy stayed warm against her chest, shielded by the extra cloak and Elias's body blocking the wind. Then, without warning, a dark shape loomed ahead, a jagged ridge of ice rising out of the white. Elias stopped, scanning it. "They'll expect us to go around," he said. "So we go through." Through. There's no before she could finish. Elias reached the ridge and placed his hand against a narrow crack. The ice shifted, revealing another hidden door, smaller than the one in the first shelter. Inside, the air was colder than she liked, but still and silent. The tunnel led downward, sloping into darkness. "What is this place?" "Hush," she whispered. "An old supply path," he said. "Shorter than the surface route. But it's dangerous." "Dangerous how?" His voice was calm, but the answer was not reassuring. "No one knows what's still alive down here." They walked for what felt like miles, the darkness broken only by the faint glow from Elias's visor. The air smelled of rust and something older, deeper, like the bones of the world. Then came the sound. Not the hunters, not claws. Breathing. Slow, heavy, and close. Elias stopped, one hand up. "Stay behind me," he murmured. From the shadows ahead, a massive shape unfolded itself. Its eyes glowed, not red like the hunters, but pale green. The woman's heart pounded. "What is that?" Elias's voice was low, almost respectful. "Something left here before the hunters came. Something that doesn't like visitors." The creature stepped closer, and the tunnel felt suddenly too small. Elias tightened his grip on his weapon. "Keep the boy close. Whatever happens, you keep moving forward." Warmth beyond the cold. The pale green eyes glowed in the dark like twin moons. The creature's massive frame blocked the tunnel ahead. Its skin was a strange mix of stone, ice, and something alive, cracked and scarred from years of existence in the deep. Steam curled from vents along its sides, each exhale a hot cloud in the freezing air. The woman's grip on the boy tightened. She could feel his small heartbeat racing against her chest. Elias stepped forward, weapon raised, but not yet. Firing. "It's not a hunter," he said quietly. "It's older, smarter." The creature's head tilted, as if listening. Then, in a voice that sounded like rock grinding against rock, it spoke, human, still walking. The woman's eyes widened at talks. Elias didn't look back. Some of the old ones remember. The creature shifted, blocking even more of the passage. "This way is mine. Leave or be taken." Elias's tone was calm. We're not here to take, just to pass. No one passes. Not anymore. The boy whispered against her ear, "Mama, is it going to hurt us?" Before she could answer, the creature lunged. Elias fired. The tunnel lit with bursts of blue light, each shot slamming into the creature's armored chest. Steam hissed as ice shattered. The beast roared, the sound rattling the walls. It swung, a massive arm striking the tunnel's side. Shards of ice rained down. "Move," Elias shouted. She ran, clutching the boy, as Elias fired again and again, stepping backward to keep the creature's focus on him. The tunnel narrowed, forcing the beast too slow. Elias used the space, ducking behind a ridge of ice and firing into the exposed joints of its legs. With a final roar, the creature collapsed to one knee, blocking half the passage. Elias didn't hesitate. He grabbed her arm and pulled her. Through the narrow gap beside it, the beast's voice rumbled after them, weaker now, still warm, still walking. They didn't stop until the tunnel began to slope upward, the air growing fresher. Ahead, faint daylight filtered through. Cracks in the ice. Elias slowed, catching his breath. "We're close." The woman's legs ached, but the thought of open air and safety pushed her forward. When they emerged from the tunnel, the light was blinding. The storm was gone, replaced by a soft, gray sky. The air was still cold, but not the killing. Cold of the open wasteland. Below them stretched a valley, a wide basin cradled between mountains. Steam drifted up from pools scattered across the ground. Patches of green clung to the rocky slopes. The boy's eyes went wide. "It's alive." Elias nodded. "Geothermal vents. The ground stays warm here. The hunters won't cross the ridges, too unstable for them." The woman stared at the valley, her chest tight. "We're safe. For now," Elias said. "Long enough to rest. Long enough to build something." They descended into the valley, the warmth rising with each step. By the time they reached the first pool, the boy had shed the cloak and was running, his hands through the grass. Elias watched him for a long moment before speaking. "He'll grow strong here. This place will keep him alive." She turned to him. "You're not staying?" His gaze swept the valley, then the ridges beyond. "There are others out there, like you. Like him. I can't stop here. Not yet." Her voice caught. "You saved us. You don't have to do more." "I promised myself I would," he said simply. The boy came running back, a small flower in his hand. "Here," he said, holding it out to Elias. Elias took it carefully, the smallest, smile crossing his face. "Thank you, kid." The woman stepped closer. "If you go, will we see you again?" His eyes softened. "If you ever need me, look to the cold. I'll be there." She wanted to say more, but a part of her knew he wouldn't stay, even if she begged. That night, they lit a fire by one of the warm pools. The boy slept quickly, his head resting in her lap. Elias sat across from her, the firelight catching the faint silver in his hair, in the quiet. She finally asked, "What are you?" "Really?" "A soldier, a wanderer." He looked into the flames. "I'm just a man who doesn't want the cold to win." By dawn, he was gone. She found no footprints leading out of the valley, only the faint warmth in the air where he'd been standing. The boy woke, rubbing his eyes. "Where's the cold warmer?" She smiled sadly, brushing his hair back. "Out there, helping someone else." They stayed in the valley, building a shelter from the old wood Elias had left in his pack. Seasons shifted, the vents kept the frost away, and the hunters never came. But sometimes, on the edge of the warm wind, she thought she heard the faint hum of a human weapon, far away in the white, and she knew somewhere another life had been pulled back from the edge, because Elias Wren had kept walking.